He had 19 bedrooms in here and one bathroom. The guy had 14 kids, one bathroom. This is and move on to greener pastures. I don't know what could be more green pasture than owning your own castle, but I'm trying not to judge here. Eventually, this building fell into disrepair. The city was going to come in and tear the building down until the Pulitzer Prize-winning author named Marjorie Rawlings stepped in, bought this place, renovated it, and converted it into a luxury hotel. Of course, adding a lot more bathrooms. During his time operating as a hotel, Ripley was a regular guest here. Every time Robert Ripley would come into town, he would bring a big pile of cash with him because he wanted to buy this building. Marjorie Rawlings was quite well off, so she would always say no. Next time Ripley was in town, he'd bring even more cash. Again, the answer's no. This back and forth between them went on for decades until one day Ripley had a heart attack live on stage in front of a live studio audience, and he died later in the hospital. They say the day that Ripley passed away, strange things started happening inside this building. Some say the ghost started walking through the walls. So they decided to sell after all. Ripley's estate then bought this building, moved his stuff in here, and this became the first permanent stationary Ripley's, believe it or not, in the entire world. Now, other than a couple murders that occurred here while this place was a hotel, that's pretty much the history behind this building down. We only got like 100 more to go. You guys ready?
Yeah.
You look ready. Calm down, guys. Don't be so excited. And nobody on, nobody off. This train will eventually be in motion. Once again, my name is Irish, and I can't believe they let me drive this thing.
Me neither.
Now, in our story, let's journey back to the early 1500s when a man by the name of Don Juan Ponce de Leon first landed here. Actually, he landed in what is now Cape Canaveral. It was just after Easter. All the flowers were in full bloom, so we dubbed this land La Florida. But Don Juan Ponce de Leon did not remain here for long because he found the locals and the weather quite inhospitable. So soon he vacated and became the governor of Puerto Rico. But during Spain's absence here in Florida, the French decided to move on in. They established Fort Caroline in what is now Jacksonville. Now, when Spain learned of the French's presence here in Florida, they took it personal. They saw this as a direct invasion of their territory. So they sent a lovely young man by the name of Pedro Menendez here to get rid of the French. I'm just kidding. Pedro Menendez was a psychopath. He was borderline, and then he crossed that border. You see, he arrived here with 3 goals. Get rid of the French, establish a settlement, and convert all the natives to Catholicism. So 2 out of 3 ain't bad. They landed behind what is now the Mission Nombre de Dios. They built a little makeshift fort, planted a cross in the sand, and that is where they held the very first Catholic Mass on North American soil. After holding that Mass, they decided it was time to march on towards the French. But there was a problem with that march. See, at the time, Florida was sitting beneath the hurricane system. But Menendez figured that marching on that fort through the hurricane would give him the element of surprise. No pun intended. However, his men were not too fond of this idea at all, because they had just been at sea for about 3 months. They were fully armed, fully armored, and about to be marching through marshlands, swamplands, jungle, and through a hurricane. So some of his men were attacked by alligators, crocodiles, poisonous snakes, and some of them just got lost in the storm. But lo and behold, Menendez and most of his forces arrived in Fort Caroline and found that fort to be lightly guarded and easily sacked. In a smug gesture, Menendez asked the French, "Hey, why was it so easy to take y'all's fort? I thought that the French were supposed to be a formidable fighting force." To which the French responded,
Sorry about the shaking
"Well, that's
up and
because
down,
we
but
just
I
sent
don't have
1,000
my
men
gimbal
by
with
ship
me, so.
to go take your fort." And hearing this, Menendez turned around in a panic and double-timed his men all the way
Yeah,
back
I guess
down
that's
here.
what I get for sitting
And we
clear
can
in the
imagine
back.
running from
Bouncy,
Jacksonville
bouncy,
to here.
bouncy, 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 bouncy.
So when they
bouncy.
arrived here exhausted and saturated, they found no Frenchmen.
We're here
He
on
asked the
San
men if they had seen
Marco,
the
San
French, and they
Marco
said no.
Street,
Then he asked
St.
the local
Augustine,
Tupac
Florida.
Native people if they had spotted the French. They said, in fact, they had spotted about 250 men out by the Bay of the Danzig Dolphins looking like drowned rats. So Menendez marched on out there to investigate. He found that out of the original 1,000 men that had set sail for his fort, they had been caught in that same hurricane that I mentioned. Their boats had capsized. They went
Bodega,
into the
tap room,
drink,
and lodging.
and only
Okay.
somewhere around 25% of those men made it out of the ocean alive. And if they thought that their woes were over, they were severely mistaken. Because then Menendez asked them a very important question, especially for Spain and especially for the
Flip-flop
1500s. Anybody know what that question was?
Are you Christian?
Nobody's ever heard of the Spanish Inquisition? The question was, are you Catholic? The French said no, and this was tragically the wrong answer.
All of your head.
Because then Menendez gathered up 150 of those remaining men, marched them back out past the dunes in which they were found, executed them one by one, and threw their bodies into the bay. Now, upon returning to base, he found the remaining 100 Frenchmen were willing to give Catholicism a try. But after
There's
this
a
one day,
lady
they
of
also realized
Lorici.
they didn't have the food, resources, or the manpower to take care of said prisoners. So they too were marched out past the dunes and fed to the same gruesome fate. The locals say the water in the bay ran red for 3 days and the smell was unbearable. And now the Bay of the Dancing Dolphins is known as Matanzas Bay. The word Matanzas means massacre. That's right, my friends, it was called the Bay of the Dancing Dolphins and now it's called Massacre Bay. And this is why we can't have nice things. That's also the first place I ever swam in the ocean when I moved down here from Ohio. But I did not know that story at the time. Now I'm
OHIO.
freaked out about it. Now on the other side of that life spectrum, I'm taking you folks to see the Fountain of Youth. But from the looks of it, nobody on here needs it. You guys look fabulous already. I have to drink there all the time because I've been working here since 1933. I found out that the fountain's waters don't do anything about my weight. Still looking for that fountain of Ozempic. I don't know if I'm legally allowed to make that joke. I'm sure I'll find out. Would be my first cease and desist order. And speaking of silence, the next neighborhood we're going down is a residential neighborhood, and the residents of this neighborhood have grown to hate the sound of my voice. So I have to go off the speakers when we go through this neighborhood, and I will pick back up with the tour when we reach the Fountain of Youth. Talk to you guys then.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Wake up, everybody. Wake up. Wake up. Time to get up. Time to get up. We're here. Wake up. Go. Ring the bell. Ring the bell.
Now, within the walls of the Fountain of Youth, you guys can find great guides, wonderful exhibits. They got a live working blacksmith that'll make stuff right in front of you. They got a live cannon and weapon firing demonstration.
Ooh.
They have a planetarium where you can learn how sailors use the stars to navigate,
Cappuccino.
using a form of navigation that was known as Dead Reckoning, which is pretty much educated guessing. Or you guys could drink from the Fountain of Youth itself, but I gotta warn you, it tastes like it smells. But pain is beauty.
Yep.
Now, I have a theory as to one of the reasons why Spain might have believed this was the location of the Fountain of Youth in the first place. Let us analyze the conquistadors' diets while they were out at sea for 3 months. You see, their water would be saturated in alcohol so that it wouldn't stagnate. So pretty much you're getting loaded every time you try to hydrate. Their meat consisted of dried and salted pork and beef, so pretty much
Yeah.
beef jerky for 3 months straight.
Yeah.
That ain't good for you. Other substances aboard that ship consisted of things like hardtack bread, which no human should eat ever. So when they arrived here, they felt lousy. They ate fresh food, they drank from the springs, and lo and behold, they felt rejuvenated. It's really not that surprising when you think about it. But the conquistadors that arrived here had an average life expectancy of only around 45 to 50 years of age. The Timucuan native people were averaging around 90. The conquistadors had an average height of 5 foot to 5'1". The Timucuan native men were averaging nearly 6 feet tall. Maybe that's another reason Spain believed that there was something in the water. Now as we exit here, to the left and to the right, these pillars at the gate are made out of a substance known as coquina. Coquina is a
Shells.
concrete-like substance that used to be mined over off Anastasia Island. And that's actually what our fortress is built out of. And we will talk about the fort later in the tour. But for right now, my friends, we are all going to jail.
Did you get it?
I mean, you guys seem like decent folks. You ain't done nothing wrong, but we are going to jail nonetheless.
That's good.
Sometimes it works out like that.
3 hots and a cot. Let's
You
go.
guys seem pretty calm about it.
Fresh squeeze.
And once again, my friends, I'm supposed to be quiet going down the street over here, so let the awkward silence resume.
First Spanish muster site in Florida.
Think about it, Reese, if you're gonna build
Now I like to have that house. I love that house. Ooh-wee.
In the late early 1900s, also known as the Gilded Age, a man by the name of Henry Flagler first arrived here in town. Flagler was in town on his second honeymoon. He fell in love with the city and decided he wanted to move here and preserve the history. But really, he wanted to build 2 luxury hotels for him and his rich friends to stay while they were out here on vacation. There was a small problem, though. One of his hotel properties had a jail sitting next to it. Well, Flagler did not want his friends sleeping next to the jail, so he asked the city if they wouldn't mind moving it. The city said, "Man, we are broke, we can't afford all that." He said, "Don't worry about it, I'll foot the bill, I'll pay for the thing." And the result of that deal is going to be that salmon color building you'll see over there to your right. That jail was built by the same company that built the Alcatraz prison.
All right.
And yes, it was a capital punishment jail. Get this, if you were sentenced to die inside that jail, you had to go out back.
You got
and
any
build your own
vacancies?
gallows. Can you imagine that? Having to build your own gallows? I'd be milking that clock. Talking about measuring twice and cutting once. You had an average life expectancy inside that jail of just 2 years, but an average sentence of 4. So either most people died or
I don't
somebody
think
was
you
doing
make
bad
it out of
math.
there.
Both.
The columns made out of seashells.
But nowadays, you go inside the jail and take yourself a tour. Best part about this jail tour is they let you go at the end. Anybody ever taken that other jail tour, the one that smells like feet and bleach, and they don't let you go? Oh, so just me? All right. My name's Irish, and I'm oversharing again.
Old Town St.
But if you do
Augustine.
decide to go inside the jail and take a tour, you get your very own reenactor, dressed up like a prisoner, that'll walk you to the jail and tell you the history. Best part about these reenactors, they try to pull off southern accents. There is nothing funnier than watching a guy from Connecticut try to hold on to a southern accent for 35 minutes.
Cocoa
And over
Bean.
here to the right, that's the oldest store museum. They actually picked up that store from another part of town. They moved it over here. I guess they really wanted it. But nowadays, you can go in there and see some of that wonderful Gilded Age turn of the century technology. Like a milkshake maker that feels like it's going to tear down your entire house. Or a track-powered washing machine. Powered by a donkey, mules, drunk children, whichever one you got.
Gator Bob, St. Augustine History
Billy.
Museum. There's a dentist. You need any dental work?
And down here at the end of the parking lot is the Manly Portable Convict Car. Convicts that were inside this jail would be rented out to local municipality and construction projects. They would be transported to their job sites via this card over here. Then you would have to live on that thing for the duration of the job. Sometimes this could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months at a time. Imagine living on that thing for 6 months in a Florida heat. I'd probably just build my gallows faster. And down the street to the right is the Florida School for the Deaf and the Blind. You can't see it, but it's down there. Ray Charles actually attended school there, however, he did not graduate. This is going to sound weird, but it's true. Ray and his friend were expelled for joyriding. The story goes, Ray was the one driving. His friend was the spotter, but they did not spot the police. I know that sounds weird, it's actually a true story. I didn't believe it either. And now we're going to be headed towards the mission Nombre de Dios. Nombre de Dios means in the name of God. This was substantial because when Spain would claim land, they would claim it for king and country. When they took this land, they claimed it in the name of God himself. I guess they figured it gave him divinity. But now the mission property is home to that big 200-foot cross that you guys might have noticed on the way out here. The cross marks the spot where Pedro Menendez and Father Lopez held the very first Catholic Mass on North American soil. The mission's also home to the National Shrine to Our Lady La Leche. If you don't know what leche means, it means milk. I didn't want to spoil it for you. Don't worry, guys, I'm not going to tell you all my milk jokes, just 2%. I'm just kidding. Now we get on the other side of the mission, we're going to roll into the more beautiful historic district of our ancient city. The city was built and controlled by Spain, then English colonials, then Spanish colonials again, then the English colonials again, then the Americans. During most of that time, or some of that time, it was surrounded by two walls, the Cupo and the Rosario line. Only way in and out of the city were the city gates. Now, if you died inside the walls of the city and you were not Catholic, you were not permitted to be buried inside. You had to go outside and be buried. They didn't really specify where, just elsewhere. If you died inside the walls of the city, you're not Catholic, but you are rich.
Cherry latte.
Well, you go outside and get buried in the Huguenot cemetery. The Huguenot had what's known as family plots. For any of you guys that don't know, family plot's a little plot of land where you and the whole family get buried side by side eventually. Well, we had those here, but ours worked a little bit different. We had limited space. So let's say you passed away, they would dig a really deep hole, put you down in it, bury you, have a service, everyone mourns. And let's say a month later, another family member dies. Well, they would dig down in that same hole and throw that family member in there with you. That's right, my friends. Eventually, you and your whole family would be stacked in there like a morbid sleeve of Oreo cookies. Sometimes it would open your casket and throw somebody else in there with you, like double stuffed Oreos. And if you died inside the city and you were Catholic, well, congratulations. You could be buried in the very first Catholic burial ground on North American soil, the Tulamato Cemetery. But there was a small problem with that plot of land. When Spain arrived here, there was already a Native American burial ground on that spot, and they slapped their cemetery right on top of it. Sure, everything was fine.
Pizza and subs.
The movie The Poltergeist.
All beer buckets
In
all
the
day
early
long,
to mid-1600s,
1770.
these Scots-Irish immigrants started showing up here in Florida. A lot of them. The Scots-Irish were known for gathering up all the livestock that the Spanish left one to free in the surrounding woods.
Cupcakes
This
and
would actually
bakery.
make them North America's first cowboys, regardless
Vacation
of
rental.
from Texas. Now these Scots-Irish men were so good at using a whip that when they would move through the woods, rather than using, say, a sword or a machete to clear the brush, they would use their whips. And they say that you can hear the crack of their whip from miles away. This gave these Scots-Irish immigrants the unfortunate nickname of crackers.
Soho.
That's right, they call it the Florida Cracker. Now these crazy crackers would cut the tops off these sable palms. They would boil out the heart, mix in fat, salt, pepper, a lot of spice, a little bit of bacon, and make a dish known as swamp cabbage.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but swamp cabbage does not sound too terribly alluring to me. I myself am Scottish and Irish, but I know that most of our cuisine was probably based on a dare. Like haggis. Ugh. Anybody ever tried haggis? You have, sir? You're brave. What do you think about it? Did you say it was okay? Wow. It's got to be a first for me.
Renaissance.
I think it tastes like it's designed for when your taste buds die. Then you find out what it's made out of and a little piece of you dies. But since the Scots-Irish immigrants showed up here in the early to mid-1600s, that would mean the first ever St. Patty's Day celebration was held right here in St. Augustine. But don't tell the folks in Boston, Massachusetts that. They haven't had much since Tom Brady left. We'll let him keep that one. And down here to the right, we're going to pass a ball made out of that substance, coquina. This ball down here marked the entrance to the Old Spanish Trail. At one time, the Old Spanish Trail spanned all the way from that point to our right, up to Jacksonville and over to San Diego, California. And in front of us are the old city gates. The city gates had a very strict open and shut policy. They would open in the morning, they would shut at night, and there was no exceptions to this rule. So if you came home late, you got stuck outside, well, congratulations, you were stuck outside for the night with all the sketchy stuff that Florida had to offer. Insects, snakes, alligators, and sometimes even the Scots Irish. Just be careful out there. Head down the street to the right, we're going to pass the Pirate and Treasure Museum. Within the walls of this museum over here, they have over 800 authentic period correct artifacts. They have over 180 authentic pirate artifacts, and they have Johnny Depp's sword from the end of the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. That's worth it right there.
City Gate
They
Distillery,
also
spirits,
have
free
one
tasting.
of 3 original Jolly Roger
We're
pirate
on St.
flags
George Street now.
known to still exist on the entire planet. And they have the only one that's permanently
Yes,
on
St.
display
George
to the
Inn.
public. The Jolly Roger is that iconic skull and crossbones you guys might know from books and movies. But Jolly Roger wasn't actually the name of a pirate. You see, before pirates were pirates, they were privateers. They sailed beneath a blood-red flag. The French hated privateers, and when they see them, they'd openly mock them. They would call them the Pretty Reds. Pretty Red in French is Jolly Rouge. Pirates adopted this name, and somehow it turned into Jolly Roger.
Just an
I don't really
Augustine
know how
Pirate
names
and
get there
Treasure
when it comes to
Museum.
pirates. For instance, the word buccaneer comes from the word boucaguet, which was a skewer used to rack and smoke meat. I have no idea how that turned the name of a sailor and then a football team in Tampa. And over there to your left, you
So
might notice
fort.
our world-famous undefeated fort. I don't really have the time to give her the introduction or the attention she deserves, so we're going to catch her on the way back. But also to the left, that inlet did not used to be there. At one time, that thing was about
River and
several
Fort
miles down the
Restaurant and
coast.
Rooftop Lounge.
So the Army Corps of Engineers came in and dredged that out for us
The river and
in the
Fort.
1940s. I'm guessing that it was the late 40s, because I believe in the early 40s the Army had better stuff to do. Just guessing. And now we're about to go down Hippolyta towards St. George.
Yep.
As you move through this part of the city, you might notice all the streets that are aimed in this direction are narrow, they're walled on both sides, and they curve about halfway down. This is for a couple different reasons. For one, let's say a cannonball goes flying down the street. Well, hopefully it would roll down the street, clip the wall, roll down the other end, and come to a stop without killing anybody or causing too much property damage. Also, the Spanish that built this city feared English invasion. At the time, the English marched in big, long columns and rows in their offensive and defensive formations, and they were unable to fit their formations through here intact. And they were forced to condense, because this is what's known as a choke point. And from a tactical standpoint, this is not where you want to be caught in a firefight. Not to say you want that anywhere, but this ain't the spot. Now, to the left and to the right of us are good examples of Spanish colonial architecture. Thing is, when Spain occupied this town, they wouldn't have glass in the windows. Most of the buildings did not have second stories, and their doors let out the courtyards and not out to the street, because you didn't want some English dude staying in your living room in the morning. When the English finally
Gourmet
took over the city, they
popsicles?
put glass in
Wow.
the windows, second stories on the buildings, doors leading out to the street,
Luxury
and they probably brought
vacation
some
rental.
terrible food with them. That's just
Waffle
an opinion.
milkshake bar.
I find it funny that the English at the time were scouring the globe looking for spices.
Casa
And then
Maya
neglected to put
restaurant,
any of them on
tequila
their
bar.
food.
Yes, sir.
For a better example of what the outside of the Spanish windows would look like in the 16 and 1700s, look over here to your left at these wooden upright bars on the outside of this business. Behind those bars, the Spanish would have mosquito net, which would allow the smoke from heating and cooking to escape and hopefully stop the critters from getting in. Now, my house in Cincinnati had bars on the windows, but that was for different reasons. And now we are approaching the intersection of Hippolyta and St. George.
Sangrias.
It is the location of the St. Photius Shrine, the oldest school museum, the pedestrian mall, and the taco shop that I am physically addicted to. It's also the home of the Medieval Torture Museum, which is just fun for the whole family. I took my 10-year-old son there. He was like, "Geez, Dad." And I was like, "I know, clean your room." Now in our story, let's journey back to the Gilded Age again and discuss Henry Flagler further. Flagler might have been better known for him and Rockefeller's aggressive seizure of Standard Oil out of Ohio. Or maybe he's better known for his forced consolidation of all the gauges of the railroad track that ran up and down the east coast of North America. This would ultimately lead to the formation and the ownership of Florida East Coast Railroad.
Columbia Gym of Spanish
And at one
restaurants
time,
since
for a very short period of time,
1905.
this will make Henry Flagler the second richest man on the
Mayday
entire planet
ice cream.
for a little while. But I will say this, the Rockefeller family said that Flagler did business like he was at war. And if the Rockefellers say that you're cutthroat, you probably are. I mean, they would know.
Don't quit your daytime
But
job.
nevertheless, the man arrived here with goals. Again, those 2 luxury hotels I was telling you guys about. But again, there was another problem with another one of those properties. Sitting in front of the Hotel Alcazar was an old, leaky, rundown, beat up, worn out, rotten wood church. So Flagler wanted to buy that property and tear down the church. But the congregation said absolutely not to the sale of their property. So Flagler had to exercise a bit of finesse. He came over here to this part of town and built up their very own church, which at the time was worth an estimated $25,000. It was made out of brick and hand-carved terracotta. He then reapproached the congregation and asked them if they wanted to swap out properties, even Stevens. Once the congregation saw this new property, they said something along the lines of, "Let us get our stuff back." And that will be the Grace United Methodist Church you see in front of you now. It might just look like some old church that has hand-carved archways, windowsill, tower. The doors are hand-carved cedar, and that is some lovely architecture. Oh, this one? Huh. I bet that's expensive. The only problem is eventually the Baptists got word that Henry Flagler was out here handing out churches like Halloween candy.
Grace
So they
United
came out.
Methodist Church.
They said, "Henry, can we have a church?" He said, "Yeah, no." Then they entered negotiations. He said, "I'll tell you guys what. If you save up $10,000, I'll give you the plot of land in which to build your church upon." They saved up those 10 G's. He coughed up the plot, and now it is the Ancient City Baptist Church. However, there was one major stipulation. They were not permitted to have a bell in their bell tower. Not then and not ever. Historians around here seem to have mixed reasons about why Henry Flagler made that call. But personally, I think it's because he was a snob and he liked to micromanage everybody. No matter how this happened, in front of us is the Ancient City Baptist Church. That tower in front of the church has the Nobel Prize pennants. Don't worry, folks, the puns only get worse. They just get worse. Ginny Louise was Flagler's daughter, and she was like his best friend. She was set to give birth to her first child, Marjorie, in New York. And Flagler ordered that she board Hastings' yacht and sail all the way down the East Coast to give birth here in Florida with him. Well, she went into labor out on choppy seas, complications arose, resulting in the death of baby Marjorie. Ginny Louise herself then fell ill, and she soon passed away as well. Flagler was absolutely heartbroken at the loss of his daughter and his granddaughter. So he wanted to build a church to memorialize them. He contacted a contractor and said, "I'll make you a deal. If you can build me this church before the 2-year anniversary of my daughter's death, I shall pay you a king's ransom. If you come in just one day over that deadline, I'll pay you absolutely nothing." Well, my friends, they came in about 4 days under that deadline. And might I say, did a fantastic job. Because in my opinion, this is the most beautiful church in our city. This is the Flagler Memorial Presbyterian Church. Ginny Louise is entombed here with baby Marjorie wrapped in her arms. Flagler and one of his wives is buried here. However, Flagler's son hated his guts and he is buried in New York.
New York.
Now over to your left across the street, you might notice Flagler College. You'll eventually notice that by the big sign in front of it. But before that was Flagler College. That was Flagler's flagship hotel,
Welcome,
the
Flagler
Hotel
College
Ponce de Leon.
students. We're here for you.
He incorporated the use of poured concrete taught to him by his friend Franklin Smith to build this and his other major hotel, the Alcazar.
Legion Ministries. Okay.
If you look in front of that building right there and you see that smokestack, that was the exhaust system to 4 Edison generators that were located here at one time. Those generators are now in the Smithsonian Museum because this place had electricity before the White House. The guests who stayed here were so nervous about turning on and off those direct current light switches. I don't know if you guys know about direct current as opposed to alternating current, but direct current switches were known for shocking the bejesus out of you. So Flagler couldn't get his guests to turn on and off their own lights. He had to come up with a solution, and he did. Flagler hired local poor children to come in here and turn on and off the lights for the guests. These children were known as Sparkies, and
Yeah.
hopefully they made good money.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Light them up.
Is that true?
That is true.
Oh.
Now, if you wanted to book this hotel during the Gilded Age, you had to pay for the entire season, which ran from around Christmas to Easter, regardless of how long you actually intended on staying here. In the early 1900s, it would cost you somewhere around $9,000 to $10,000 to book this place. Adjusted for inflation, that'd be around $200,000 in today's money. You can't afford that kind of money for a hotel stay? Well, neither can I. But don't worry about it, my friends. There was a loophole. All you had to do to stay here absolutely free was be elected President of the United States of America. So that's easily obtainable. 3 United States presidents took Henry Flagler up on his offer to stay here. But Teddy Roosevelt hated this place and said it was boring. But old Teddy Roosevelt didn't really seem like the hang out at the hotel type of guy anyway. A lot of people don't know this. Theodore Roosevelt swore that when he got out of presidential office, he was going to single-handedly hunt down Bigfoot. I know that has nothing to do with the tour. I just think it's awesome. And over there to your right, that dome-like structure protruding from the side of the building, well, that is the former ballroom of the Ponce de Leon Hotel. And now it is the dining hall for the students that attend school there.
Cannon Hall.
It's also wrapped in 100% authentic Louis Comfort Tiffany glass windows. Tiffany did the interior design for the entire hotel. Now they say that all that Tiffany stuff in there is priceless, but the insurance companies found the price tag and slap on it. Sorry, he told me to. Sorry, I scared you. Because they value all that Tiffany stuff in there in the millions, or at least that's the insurance policy they carry on it. That would explain why the windows of the ballroom are surrounded in hurricane-proof plexiglass. And across the street is the old Hotel Alcazar. That was Flagler's second hotel. And we'll talk more about that in a sec. And down the street here to the right, you're going to see a statue of the man himself. It is a statue of Henry Flagler. In my opinion, this statue over here really embodies his personality. Because if you look closely, you'll see the man's got one hand in his pocket,
With his
holding
pistol.
onto his cash,
Yeah.
and he's staring at the bank over here. He's got his mind on his money and his money on his mind. But over here to the left, this is the house that Franklin Smith built, the Villa Zareda. It is modeled after 1/8 of one wing of the Alhambra Palace. And it was one of the first 2 buildings in North America built from poured concrete. If you look at the side of the building, you see how it's stacked like layer cake? That was the slip concrete technique. The same technique that was then used to build the Ponce de Leon and the Hotel Alcazar. But nowadays, there's a lovely little museum inside here. You can go inside, take yourself a tour, and if you need, they'll give you a headset that'll give you an audio-guided tour through the building. It will give you the tour in English, Spanish, or French. I took the tour in French, which was confusing. And across the street in front of us, these chains hanging on these concrete uprights over here were known as harbor chains. Let's say you had an unwanted ship entering your harbor. Well, you would stretch those chains between 2 points of tension. They would sit just beneath the water line, unbeknownst to your enemies. It would then drag along the bottom of the imposing ship and send your enemies into the drink. Then you would just have uninvited swimmers, if they could swim.
Right.
Which I found out in my research of merchant sailors, pirates, and privateers of the 16 and 1700s, that about 80% of them could not swim. Even in the Dutch East India Trade Company, there was only about 1 in 7 sailors that could swim. I feel like that's a strange occupation to pick if you can't swim. I mean, I know the idea to stay on the boat, but it's nice to have a contingency plan. And over there to the right, above the door, is Arabic writing that says, "No God but God." I don't know what that means, but I know that they mean it. And over here to the right where that Chase Bank is, that's where the old jail was before Flagler paid to build a new one. It's funny how crooks just end up in the same spot. I'm getting sued. Take that, Chase Bank.
I agree. Yeah, my boyfriend uses it.
And as I told you guys, some people thought that the Ponce de Leon Hotel was stuffy, boring, and full of rich dudes. So over here, the Alcazar was more of their entertainment option. Inside here, they had a bit of gambling, bowling alleys, a theater, silent movie theater, and at the time, they had the world's largest indoor swimming pool. On the other side of the building, they had a tennis court. On the other side of the tennis court was an archery range, which seems like a weird place to put that. Kind of precarious. But at the very end of the street, they had a little obstacle course where you could go get your driver's license to operate those ridiculous-looking penny farthing bicycles. If you guys don't know what a penny farthing bicycle is, they're the bikes with the huge 6-foot front wheel, tiny little back wheel, and they look like rolling head trauma. You had to have a license to operate a bicycle down here at the Gilded Age, but not to operate a motor vehicle. Like I said, things were sketchy. And ladies, you didn't have to worry about it anyways, because you guys were not permitted to ride a bike down here at the Gilded Age. It was considered to be unladylike. That's right, they didn't want you ladies rolling around town showing off ankles.
Right.
I myself, I support ankles. That's my stance on it. God's queen. And down the street to the right is Lincolnville, an area in which their people and their history is steeped in the civil rights movement. Like down the street to the right is the Civil Rights Museum, and that is the former dental offices of Dr. Robert B. Hayling. Dr. Hayling was heavily involved in the civil rights movement down here in the South. He was a key and integral part to its success. This almost cost the man his life a few times. It cost him his freedom several times, and they pulled his license to practice dentistry. That would stand the good rights when they made his old practice the Civil Rights Museum. Now we're going to loop back around the old Hotel Alcazar, which is now the Otto Leitner Museum, and we are going to head towards the Plaza de la Constitución. The plaza is called that because at one time Spain
Sorry about
switched
that,
over
folks.
from
I
a
had to
monarchy
make
to something
a
slightly
parallel
resembling
adjustment
a
here.
constitutional-based monarchy.
No, camera adjustment.
I don't really know how one of those works anyway. I figure either going to be one or the other, but for a while they tried out a little bit of
City
both.
of St. Augustine
During that time, they
Financial
commissioned the building of
Services Center.
constitutional monuments at all of their territories around the world. Now, when the monarchy regained full control, it was ordered that they all be destroyed. Either we didn't get the memo, or we just did not care. Because we still have ours. And over here to the right, there's a parking lot. There's not much exciting about that. Except, before there was a parking lot there was a town meeting and assembly area where they'd get together and make announcements and read off news. That's the location where they read the Emancipation Proclamation for the first time.
Yeah,
down here.
her.
And over here to the left, the semi-cylindrical structure protruding from the side of the building was one of the ends of the former world's largest indoor swimming pool. The other end was on the other side of the block. Right down the center of that swimming pool, they had a big heavy curtain that separated men and women because they were just no fun at all back then.
That's right.
Then I wouldn't have learned how to swim. And down the street to the right is the Casa Monica Hotel. That is a hotel that Henry Flagler pretty much stole from his best friend Franklin Smith. By stole, I mean he intentionally bankrupted the man and picked up his hotel at auction for about 4% of its production cost. He was just a really good guy like that. And if you look over here to your left, you'll see a statue of that psychopath Pedro Menendez I was telling you guys about. And yes, ladies, he is wearing tights with mid-calf boots. It would take a while for that look to catch on again. Very fashion forward of him. That thing he's wearing that looks like a mini skirt was called a pantaloon. They say the higher your social status, the shorter your pantaloon got. So thank God that's all the social status he achieved. He'd be out here looking like David Bowie from Labyrinth. Now this plaza we're rolling into is also an essential part to any Spanish Town plan. See, to have a bona fide Spanish Town plan, you gotta have those 3 key ingredients.
Starbucks.
Governor's house, open air market, and the church. Well, over here to your left, there's the governor's house. I mean, DeSantis doesn't live there, it's the old governor's house. Down the street is the former open air market, and across the plaza to the left will be our church, the Cathedral Basilica. Those 3 things make up any Spanish Town plan. Now as we roll through this plaza, you guys are going to notice cannons all over the place. At one time, cannons were an essential part of life here in St. Augustine, or at least staying alive. Because we have been attacked here over 50 times. Our city has been completely burnt to the ground about 10 times by people like Sir Francis Drake, pirates like Robert Searle, Governor Moore of the Carolinas, and us once. Oops. So best believe those cannons saw plenty of action. Sir Francis Drake actually came back to the city and burnt it down for a second time. That was awful nice of him. Drake was also known as the first man to actually circumnavigate the entire globe. Because unlike Magellan, he was alive the entire time. Humble brag. And if you look over there to your left, that's not a statue of Prince. That is Don Juan Ponce de Leon. They say that man was 5'7", but I heard that's a bit of a lie. They say that when he would show up for his measurements, he would wear his fanciest boots and his tallest hat. And then they would measure from the heel of his boot to his floofiest feather. That's where they came up with measurements like 5'7". In actuality, those close to the man said he was more like 4'11". So he was short, but don't make fun of him about it because he was an absolutely skilled and deadly swordsman. Probably assisted by that lower center of gravity. And now we're going to be headed towards the Cathedral Basilica. It is home of the funeral of Bishop Barreau, also known as the Exploding Bishop. You guys want to hear that story? Good, because I love telling it. Bishop Barreau was a very popular Catholic bishop all over the world. He was here for a visit in the 1800s and he died of something called yellow fever. So they knew it was going to take a little bit of time for everybody to make travel arrangements and get into town for his funeral. So they put his body inside of a big airtight steel casket with a thick glass lid for viewing, and they sealed it for freshness, like a sandwich. Well, he started falling in about 200 people at a time inside the cathedral, have a funeral, kick those folks out, get the next group in. Well, they really underestimated the drawing power of Bishop Barreau, because his funeral went on for about a month and a half. That's right, folks, it was July here in St. Augustine. There was no AC inside the cathedral. The bishop was not embalmed, so he started to swell substantially. So one day the preacher was up on stage preaching the eulogy that he had done several times before, when all of a sudden the bishop popped. The resulting pressure relief broke glass and threw Bishop all over the crowd. It looked like somebody threw a pizza into a ceiling fan. Like somebody shoved a dumpster of Arby's off a cliff. Like somebody threw a wet box of Hot Pockets to an engine turbine. You guys getting those visuals back there? Enjoy your dinner. Best part about the story is the people in there were not allowed to leave. They had to stick around and play a very morbid game of pickup bishop. But don't worry, it only took about 45 minutes to clean up the bishop, put him back in his casket, and seal him for freshness again.
Here's the old governor's house.
I'd have been in therapy the next day.
Cultural Center Museum.
And down the street on the corner to the right, that pink building was the old home of the Old Potter's Wax Museum. That's also the site where they shot a very small part of the 1950s film, The House of Wax, the old Vincent Price classic. Not to be mistaken with the terrible remake from the early 2000s. You guys know that one with Paris Hilton in it? That movie was horrifying for other reasons. And if you guys get tired of land tours today, go out to the marina and take one of our several boat tours. We have a pirate ship called the Black Raven. We got sightseeing tours, nature tours, educational tours. We even have a beautiful sunset cruise. I took the sunset cruise. I didn't realize that it's kind of for couples. I went on there alone like a weirdo. But I still had fun, because you gotta know how to love yourself, people. And over there to your right, that's our Bridge of Lions. It is called that because of the lions that sit at the foot of the bridge. Now they say that those lions are carved from the same quarry as Michelangelo's David, but I have not been able to confirm that in my research, so I ain't gonna lie to you. But their names are Firm and Faithful. They're firm because they're made out of marble, and they're faithful because they weigh thousands of pounds and they ain't going anywhere.
In the sky.
And over there to the left, that relatively tall building.
Getting
never
close to
mind the
being
light
time
green.
for the
Heck
launch.
with that building. It's not that interesting anyway. And now, ladies and gentlemen, she's fighting out of the red corner. Weighing in at several thousand tons, she is the reigning, undisputed, undefeated fortress of North America. She is the Castillo de San Marcos. And she was completed in the late 1600s. Since then, she's been attacked several different times by several different countries. No one has ever taken the sport, my friends. No one's ever even come close. The only time this fortress changed hands is when the entire territory itself changed hands. That was usually by treaty. But Governor Moore of the Carolinas, during a time where the Carolinas were an English settlement, he attacked this fort for 50 days straight to no avail. With a full flotilla of ships and guns blazing, he bombed on this fortress from sun up to sundown. At sundown, he would give it a break. That's when the Spanish would sneak out of the fort. They would douse their lamps. They would pop cannonballs out of the walls, make repairs to the coquina, replaster and repaint to make the fortress look brand spanking new. Now try to imagine this for a second. You're a military commander that's been trying to take a fort for almost 2 months. Every morning you wake up and the place looks like it magically grew back overnight. This would have to be maddening. To make matters even worse, they would gather up your cannonballs that you fired on the fort, and they would bring them inside. Because this fortress was North America's first recycling center. That's right, my friends. They would gather up your cannonballs that you fired on the fort, and fuego, return them to the sender. This would add a great deal of insult to injury. Some historians say the Spanish used to literally write insults on the cannonballs before firing them back. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I know it's hilarious. And it would definitely prove that words hurt. A lot. Now, if you guys have never been inside the fort, I would definitely recommend it. And when you get done with the fort, go across the street and see one of the reasons we have a fort. Pirates. That's right, across the street, the Pirate Treasure Museum. I already told you guys a little bit about that one. Why sit halfway out the road? But if you go inside the Pirate Treasure Museum, make sure you ask them if Johnny Depp hand-delivered that sword himself. See, about 4 years ago here in town, a rumor started amongst tour guides that Johnny Depp hand-delivered the sword that they have in there with his own 2 hands. But this rumor came from a credible source. It was me. I made the whole thing up and they kept repeating it. Fiction can be fun. So if you go inside there, make sure you tell them Irish sent you. And now, my friends, we are headed back to Ripley's Believe It or Not. But you guys can believe it, because I wouldn't lie to you. You've trusted me this far. On Ripley's property, you might see a familiar face. We have an exact replica of Michelangelo's David. Now, David used to be out here on the street corner, but that caused some problems. Car crashes, collegiate pranks, people dressing him funny, so on and so forth. So eventually, the city grew tired of the shenanigans. They approached Ripley's and asked if we wouldn't mind tucking David back there behind the bushes. And Ripley's obliged.
All right, everybody, I'm going to end this right now. We're back
Now,
where
I
we
don't know
started
about
from.
you guys,
Catch
if they
y'all
were
later.
looking to